Hi, this is Sally Dadmun Bixby, and I am welcoming you. Hi, I'm Sally. Not sure exactly when it started, so I'll start over again. I am Sally Dadmun Bixby. Welcome. I want to give you a moment or so to get situated. One of the things that can help you with this presentation today is that I have handouts that are on the USD Nonprofit Institute website. If you go there to the event for today, you'll see that you can click on my name and you can see the slides that I'm going to be using today and the handouts that I'm referring to. And I'm also telling you that because as those of you who have seen me present before, I'm a big advocate for self-care. So if you didn't get your walk in this morning and you think, like, I could really use a walk, or I want to walk around my house and clean up all the toys that my children left last night and I'd be able to relax better, put in your headphones and you can look at those later. Or if you want to follow the bouncing ball with me and look at those as you get situated, then please do so. So I'm going to make this as interactive as I can. I cannot see you. You can see me. I want to answer questions as I go. So please start by letting me know who you are. I'd like to see who is out there. Your name. Hi, Cynthia. Your name, your organization you're with, and why are you here today? I mean, I understand that you want to learn more about having a strong year-end appeal, but if there's something else, then, fire away and let me know. Like I said, I'll be answering questions as I go. So let's go to the next slide, please. So in general, I just want to make a huge plug for self-care and the extraordinary times that we're living through. And we as nonprofit professionals who have chosen as our profession. And I think choice is a really important word here, because I think probably all of you could be off working someplace else, making a lot more money, getting better benefits, etc. But you want to make your community a better, stronger place. And so that is why you have chosen to do what you're doing, most likely, is my guess. And right now, we are living through extremely difficult times. I don't know about you, but in the opening remarks this morning, I got a little teary-eyed because it has been literally in my face. And I say that because I am coming to you today from Portland, Oregon, which is where I live most of the time. I grew up in San Diego, and I still do work in San Diego. And spend a lot of time with family there. But most of the time I live in Portland, Oregon, and we are surrounded by fire right now. And I know that there's a lot in the San Diego, California, the West Coast is on fire. We are living through what I think is now like the fourth stage of crises that we have gone through starting in March. The pandemic, the economic fallout, the racial justice movement that we're going through that was so eloquently spoken about this morning, and now this environmental crisis. So it's extremely difficult and trying times. And so I want to encourage you to take care of yourself, because we have a lot of work to do, as we've heard this morning. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do in the next 53 minutes or so is we are going to talk about the year-end appeal. There was probably a time where I had a real rote way of, hi Ann from Community Food Connection. I would have had a real rote way of approaching this. But because I'm making a personal commitment to undoing racism and perpetuating it through nonprofit, the techniques that I have been taught. As you can see, I have silver hair, so I've been around on this planet for a little while. I've been fundraising for about 30 years. I've spent basically my entire working career in the nonprofit sector. Obviously, I am a white woman, and I come from a privileged background, and so I know that, you know, my voice has only so much impact, or I can only speak from so much experience. I loved what Emily was saying this morning. It really resonated with me, and I so appreciated her honesty and vulnerability. What I have heard said about committing to undoing these systems that have perpetuated inequity in our culture, it's a struggle. And I look at it as a lot like yoga. It's a practice. I am also a yoga practitioner. I get up every day and get on my mat and try to approach it like it's the first time. There are some poses I used to do really well and can't so much anymore. And so it's a little bit more of a struggle. We pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and keep going. So I'm going to tell you things today you may or may not agree with. I'm always open to feedback, and I think that as white people who have leadership positions in the sector, or anywhere for that matter, then we need to be particularly open to feedback right now. So I'm going to try and weave some of those concepts through this presentation today. And I want to say hi to Abby Reynolds. Nice to hear from you, Center Stage Productions. Awesome, from Escondido. There is a little bit of delay in the question when you post things and when I get them, so be patient. I am seeing them. So in this next hour, we are going to cover a lot. And as I mentioned to you, the handouts that I'm going to refer to and my slides are located on the Nonprofit Institute's board. So I say split your screen and pull them up as we go if you like. So this is what I'm going to cover. We're going to talk about how to create a plan for year-end appeal, and let's get started as soon as possible. One of the ways that you can be the most successful in fundraising is by planning early, and September is a great time to get started. I want you to think carefully about your messaging and your voice. I've referred to this a little bit already. I love some of the things that were said in the last session, in particular about what it means. I wrote it down. I'm looking at my notes to be an ally, an advocate, or an accomplice. I'm seeing a lot of folks right now post Black Lives Matter messaging on their nonprofits for all kinds of organizations. It's nonprofits, it's my workout site, etc. What I really liked that was said is you need to back it up with some tangible actions. And this is one of the things I'm talking about with my clients right now, is that it's really important that you're not just, jumping on the bandwagon, that you are actually going to do something about it. So this is where you need to be thoughtful about your voice. And then the last thing is, when you're going into the planning for this, I'd like you to think about asking for something specific. A lot of times we spend all kinds of time talking about every single thing we do under the sun. Let's think about you asking for your donors to support something that is more specific. So, next slide, please. Next slide. Here we go. Okay, so don't be fooled. I have these conversations every day with people. It's like, oh, now is a bad time to raise money. It's going to be rude, bad manners. It's like, no, I don't agree with you. People, this is an opportunity. If you feel this way, I want you to go on a little journey with me. This is a great opportunity for you to evaluate your own personal feelings about money. Because if you think that asking for money is awkward, uncomfortable, that you're intruding on people's privacy, personal space, etc., that's normal. I understand that. But what I'd like you to reframe it for a moment and think about the fact that people really give, and give big dollars, because they want to see their values in motion. An example is, there's going to be a lot of trees that are going to need to be replanted not far from where I live right now. I may do some of the planting, but I'm going to support the organizations who are going to be spending lots and lots of time. Same with the other issues that are going on in our community right now. People are still giving, have money, and want to make a difference through their philanthropy. Do not forget that, okay? I have been helping people raise a lot of money during the pandemic, especially right after it hit. So keep that in mind. There are people out there, yes, who are hurting, and that's why you need to be very careful and listen to your donors and what's going on in their lives before you start asking them for money, especially if you're doing major donor work. Listen first and then ask. However, there are people out there who are doing extraordinarily well. For one, they're not spending anywhere nearly as much money as they used to because they're saving money. They're not taking big trips. They may be remodeling their house right now because they're spending a lot of time at home. But the fact is, the stock market has done, I mean, there's been some blips very recently, but overall during this time, the stock market has done pretty well. So your major donors in particular, depending on what businesses they generate their income from, are doing pretty well. So keep that in mind. Next slide, please. So this is a good opportunity for you to look at your personal view of your donors, okay? So especially now, all right, I believe in this sector that we are here because we are at heart activists, organizers. We are passionate leaders for our mission. And hi, Daniela, Program Director for Love and Art. Nice to see you. I want to invite you to consider that your donors are your mission and value aligned partners, okay? Treat them like colleagues and the intelligent people that they are, okay? They want to support their values through your work, so be open and honest about what your work is. Don't have private inner conversations about what the core of your work is about and then present something that is a little washed down to your donors. Do not do that. Be loud and proud about what you do. And I'm going to give you an example about that. I have worked with an organization here in Portland called Growing Gardens, who has been doing their undoing racism work for quite some time. And a couple years ago, they did, actually it was a little more than a year ago, it seems longer because time is so weird right now, they did their first mission-centered brunch ask event. And they had been doing this undoing racism work for quite some time. And I said, you need to get out there and be loud and proud about it. Do not back down about what you care about and how you're doing the work. The outpouring that I saw from that audience afterwards was extraordinary. The room was mostly white people. We've got a lot of well-meaning white people here in Portland, as you probably are aware, because of the protesting that has gone on for over 100 days. And I will include myself in that, are looking for ways to make a difference and for organizations who are really living in their values. This is what I do not believe donors are. Donors are not heroes. I always feel really weird when I've made my $100 gift and I've made this huge difference. I don't really think that I've made that big of a difference. And I don't think I'm a hero for giving $100. I believe that as someone who has resources, it is my responsibility to share. And please, let's get away from the savior work, okay? Earlier, there was reference to the history of nonprofits, like how nonprofits need to be fixed and how there's really, in our work, we spend a lot of time undoing the systems that have been put in place that have made it impossible for the people who participate in our programs to do well in our society. And so that's why a lot of nonprofits have been set up, is to try and level the playing field. But let's not reinforce that the people who participate in the programs actually need saving. Okay, we need to be strength-based, and let's not reinforce those stereotypes with our donors. I believe that donors want to learn, and they inherently are good people, and they want to know how to do a better job of being a participant with you. So let's treat them as such. And same with, there's a concept that comes up about, being a tourist. It's like, we need to be thoughtful about the people who we are representing and we're talking about, and let's not reinforce the stereotypes as we go. Next slide, please. So there is still time to cultivate and steward your donors. This is why I'm saying September is a really great time. I believe in the 80-20 approach. 80% of your time should be spent, ideally, as much as you can. And I know you have way too much to do and not enough time to do it. Try and spend more time cultivating and stewarding your donors, okay? Cultivation, bringing them closer to the mission. Steward, saying thank you and showing them what you did with their gift. All right, so there's time to make those calls to some of your donors before, and don't ask them for anything except how are they doing? What's going on with them? Update them on what you've been doing in the last few months. If you haven't had that conversation, now is a time to do that. There are 3 parts to getting ready to make your next ask. So there's the thanking process, demonstrating the impact, and then that point where we want them to recommit. And one thing that we have learned is that the more specific you are in the request, the more likely they are to give a larger gift and give again. Okay? Next slide, please. So here's the piece about finding your voice. And I know there's a lot of different folks out there, a lot of different kinds of organizations, different sizes and whatnot. So these are conversations that I think are important for you to have, not only with your staff and your board, but with your stakeholders. How do they want to be represented? So what I want to encourage you to do when you're getting ready to write your letter is to think about adding a COVID update and a reference to the times, but do it in a way that is authentic. I had a conversation recently with a client who basically wants to say, yeah, we have problems. The people that participate in our programs, and I'm being purposefully careful about what I say here to protect identity. Yeah, they have a lot of interactions with the police too. I mean, they're more likely to be arrested. And I'm like, yeah, I think you need to be really careful about going down that road. What are you trying to say with that? Are you trying to say that you believe in reforming the police? Are you saying that you think that you're part of this movement right now, which the leadership is around Black Lives Matter? What are you trying to say? And he just kept scratching his head and he was frustrated by it, but he also understood what I was saying. You need to be thoughtful about your messaging about these times, but also don't ignore it. Present a problem, offer a solution, and a call to action. I like this formula. There's several different ways, and especially depending on the mission of your organization on how to approach it. There's a website called Big Duck, and I think it's Big Duck Marketing Communications. They have an excellent piece out right now about messaging and the kind of language to use. We are living through a time of movement. A lot of us, depending on your nonprofit, we're trying to emphasize the movements that are going on right now, and the language that is more movement language is we instead of you. And I think this goes back to the hero savior piece I was talking about earlier, and also about presenting donors as partners and partner with us. We together, these are the things that we want, instead of this is the difference you can make We can make a difference by doing these different actions. We can make a difference by supporting these kinds of issues that are going on in our community. So think about that, finding your voice. Next slide, please. So here's another resource that I think is really important, and refer to the Ethical Storytelling Pledge. And I'm going to highlight a few pieces here, and if you're looking at the handouts, you can see it. Tell other stories the way we would want our story told. Okay? So think about how if you are highlighting a personal story of somebody, and I'll tell you right now, there are folks out there who are saying you shouldn't even do that. So these are things that we're being asked to look at. This is the be curious part, okay? Because I was taught traditionally, like, this is what you do. You find a story and you highlight this person and so on. If you're going to do that, think about using the Ethical Storytelling Pledge, the things that they outline. So I'm looking at the handout too right now. Tell other stories the way we want our story told. Always put people first as you're going through that. Hold up the dignity of our constituents through empowering imagery and messages that motivate engagement and inspire hope. So, no sad little dogs by the side of the road, okay, that kind of thing. And, I really should be using a person in that, starving children, all right, not a dignified image, okay. Truthfully represent a situation or story to educate our audiences of the realities, complexities, and nuances of the issues we advocate for. All right? So truly represent a situation. I like that. I also, something that I strongly believe and have been encouraging my clients to do recently is if you are using somebody you're using their story in your year-end appeal, compensate them for their time. And there's a few reasons for this. One, you're asking them for their time. Most likely, you are getting paid to create this campaign. I've thought about this because I do a lot of events, now virtual events, and I've thought, like, okay, here's this table here of people, and we're talking about the run of show and the different speakers, and the only people who aren't getting paid here are the people who are doing the storytelling. Not a real equitable way to approach it. Also, think about power dynamics when you ask somebody for their story. Are they someone who is using your services right now and they feel like maybe they have to do it because if they don't, that they could get kicked out of the program? Power dynamics are really important to think about. Maybe something we don't think about so much because personally we believe that we would never ever do something like that. But if you're somebody who is going to the food bank every month or week and they need that food in order to feed their family and pay their bills, and you think they've got a great story and you approach them, how is that going to make them feel? How is that going to shift the power dynamic? So maybe it's somebody who's graduated from your program. Maybe someone who's no longer in your program and they're actually now on staff or they're on your board. So think about those things as you go through this. Next slide, please. So themes are important, all right? And I think also a way, by nature, human beings, we love stories, all right? It's our brains are set up for a beginning, a middle, and an end, okay? And so that's why storytelling is so engaging for human beings. Okay. Now I am showing you here, these are appeals that are pre-COVID. Okay. Can you imagine now a college getting together 1,848 students to do this picture? I don't think so. However, what I want to convey is like the strong, simple messaging that was conveyed through this image. So this is Lewis and Clark College here in Portland, Oregon, my alma mater. I love their year-end appeal that they did last year and the imagery that they did this. Stand with students. And they also had a match in here, which is also a really important thing I want you to be thinking about. And another reason why it might be important for you to be reaching out to your major donors now in a real authentic way, of course, because thank you, House of Restoration, Community and Connection, for your feedback. I appreciate it. Because they may want to see their gift doubled or tripled by your other donors. So think about adding a match, and that's what was going on here. But the imagery was powerful. The messaging, it's singular. It's for scholarships, okay? Really easy to understand. Next slide, please. Here's another one that I liked. So you can see this is the envelope. Some people advocate for having envelopes made. I'm okay with that. Sometimes though, I think it's like a signal like, oh, here's the appeal. It's something you can do, of course, but what I want to emphasize, and I'll go over this again before we're finished here, is how important it is to hand address as many of those envelopes as you can. Way more likely to be opened. But you can see here, urgent need medical funds. Again, like, you know, the campaign right there, and it's for cats because you've got that beautiful cat there on the cover that we're going to learn a little bit more about here in a moment. Next slide, please. So I know this is really small. Sorry about that. If you go to the slides, though, you can enlarge it. But what I'm going to do is read. So, oh, thank you. I like it. Highlight some pieces here. So this is from Cat Adoption Team, and they were getting a bunch of cats that were sick. And in order for them to be ready for adoption, they have to be well. So here is, look at how simple this appeal is. It is concise. It's got beautiful pictures. It highlights two cats, Vladimir and Ivy, and they get the point across really quickly. In just the past 2 weeks, nearly 180 homeless cats and kittens have come into our shelter for help. More than half of these cats need medical care. All right, you get the gist right there. Okay, so I like how there's beautiful pictures, graphics, white space, an awesome PS down at the bottom. Sick cats are waiting for your help right now. Donate online to give your support immediately. Okay, so I thought that was really effective. Let's go to the next one, please. Next slide. So this is a letter that actually came to me during COVID. All right, so this is from the Clackamas Service Center that's also here in Portland. And they sent out a letter asking for support because they need to distribute way more food. They work with people experiencing homelessness, people who are houseless, and low-income folks. But this is what I think is especially important about this letter here. So I'm a monthly donor to this organization. She wrote a note here that was, I thought, very effective. We so appreciate your monthly gift. Please don't feel the need to give now. We just wanted to keep you updated. This, to me, is an excellent way to possibly get another gift and be respectful. They didn't, it's like I was giving monthly to an organization who told me, Sally, if you sign up to be a monthly donor, then we're not going to ask you for any more money. Well, that turned out to not be true. And I actually ended up stopped giving to them because I said, look, first of all, if you have so much money that you can send me all these mailings, I'm not feeling like you really need my $33 a month or whatever it was. I called them, I talked to them about it. Fundraisers are the worst donors. We are high maintenance. I will admit it. But there was no acknowledgement of the fact that I was already giving to them monthly, and they just kept sending me appeals. And then what I like to hear is the bottom of the PS. We know this is a difficult time for everyone, and I want you to know that if you are in need, we are here for you. I thought that was so respectful and also possibly true. I mean, there may have been somebody who was giving who ended up losing their job and during the pandemic, and they do need help. And again, I thought this was a really respectful way to make an ask. So I applaud this. Something else I want you to think about, and I'm sorry I don't have a slide about this. I'm just going to tell it to you, and that is one of my clients last year. They had a theme, and it was a fun tagline, and the tagline was, "Are we there yet?" And it's because they were buying a van for the people that participate in their programs. And they had vans that were old and breaking down. And when they weren't able to use the van, then people were missing out on programming that was really important to them. So the theme that we came up with was, "Are we there yet?" which was kind of fun. And then we just wove it through everything that we did. So keep that in mind. And find a theme, specific ask. You can have fun with it as long as it's respectful for what you're asking for. Okay? So let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So now is a good time to look at a few of these things. And also, I want to pause for a second because I want you to think about if you have any questions. And please fire them away. There is a little bit of a delay, and they don't last very long. So I'm going to try and slow down a little bit so that you have an opportunity to pose any questions that you have, and I can answer them. So now is a good time for you to go to your database. Oh, don't we all love our databases? No, most of you don't. As a matter of fact, I hear people all the time say, like, what software they hate. I hear very little about what software they like. So this is a time for you to have an honest conversation with yourself about, do you need to do some work on your database? And as a matter of fact, I've got a wonderful colleague who is an expert in this area. And if you feel free to email me afterwards about anything I talk about or any questions that you have. And I can give you her information. Her name is Amanda Jarman, and she is called the Fundraising Nerd, and she does a really good job of helping people fix their databases and clean up the data. There's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out, and that is so true. So just have like a real honest conversation with yourself right now about your database, and is this time to dedicate it is now the time to dedicate some time for cleaning it up and fixing it so that you can be a more effective fundraiser. Because if you think, well, I can't even run a list that I think is going to be accurate, then it makes it harder for you to be more effective in some of the steps that we're going to talk about. So think about that. And some of the fixes may be way easier than you even think. So segment your list if it makes sense. And what I mean by segment is, your monthly donors. It could be people who give over a certain level. It could be your lapsed donors, people who haven't given for 2 years or more. It could be folks that are new donors this year. They gave maybe because of COVID. You need to think about what those different segments can look like. Something to consider doing this year is, and this is why having accurate information is important, is experiment by asking for an increase in giving. You gave $25 last year. With our increased need, would you consider giving $50 this year? Something like that. That is proven to be effective. You need to do what feels right to you. Personally, it doesn't inspire me. But again, like I said, I'm a fundraiser. We tend to be more high maintenance. It also may be an opportunity to ask to join a certain level of giving. It's like at the $1,000 level, this is our leadership giving level, whatever it may be. And again, there is some controversy right now about even having giving circles. So again, we're being curious right now. We're listening, we're paying attention. That's something you need to think about. Because sometimes I think one of the things that's hard for me to watch is the elitism that is in fundraising. Who do we spend the most time on? The people who have the most money to give. I have a client, I feel like they are so living their values. They have, the executive director was calling everybody, including a guy that gave $5. Well, he started meeting with this man, and it turns out he had experienced a long period of homelessness in his adult life. And he is housed now, and he started giving the organization some money. And, it just makes my heart sing to think about the fact that this executive director touches base with this man every year. And he is now giving like $12 a year. And it seems like, what's the difference to $12? Well, to that man, it's huge. And if your organization is about lifting people out of poverty, these are places where we need to start thinking about our values a little bit. Okay. So just something to think about. All right. We are losing the small donor, and there's different reasons why that have been mentioned. One is that our middle class is continuing to shrink. There's no doubt about that. But I also think it's because as fundraisers, we spend most of our time on the people who give the most money. Time is a precious resource. I understand that. But these are things to think about, okay? I'm being curious. Be curious with me. Another thing I want you to think about is a We Miss You mailing. So people who used to give and stopped giving, sending to them a survey, for example, and I've got that. It's one of the handouts I have for you. And sending them a mailing. Direct mail is not dead, people. Okay. As a matter of fact, it is alive and well. I think we get barraged during via email. So you need to be careful about stopping doing direct mail if that's a conversation you guys are having. I mean, test it. If people aren't responding to it, that's one thing. But if you've got people who are just giving through direct mail, and I'll tell you, that's where a lot of older donors give. I mean, I'm kind of getting the older donor category. I get my mailing, I keep a pile, and then I go through it before the 31st of December, and I make my gifts online. So something to think about. But anyway, on the We Missed You survey, so something to consider is in your segmenting, who hasn't given for 2 years or more, send them a letter similar to the one that you're sending to those who are your current or active donors. And then also ask them, it's like, we miss you. We haven't heard from you for a while, and we'd like to find out why. So would you be willing to fill out this survey? So when I first started doing this, email wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. And certainly there weren't all the free resources to do surveys. So, online. So consider doing both. You can do an email with it, and they can click a link and send it back to you. They do need to update information or send you who they are if you're going to update your database. This is another way too to make it more efficient for you and update your databases to get the survey back from them. And you can find out, like, why are you not giving anymore? I'm financially not able. I gave an honor or memory of someone, and I'm not interested in giving again. I have other charities I support. And then the last one is a reason not listed above, and they write in. Sometimes people are mad at you. You did something that upset them, and there's some repair work that needs to be done. So keep that in mind. And then also, okay, I got a question. As a small nonprofit, one employee, what steps can I take expanding my donor database with limited funds and resources? I feel like I'm sending my emails and asks to the same 4,000 people in our database. Interesting. Okay, so this, and that was from NTLP. So thank you for sending that. This is a good way, I think, to do it, is to whittle down who really wants to be more actively involved with you and who doesn't care about hearing from you anymore. So is by doing a We Miss You mailing and survey, which you can do via email as well as hard copy. And spell her last name. Is that maybe Amanda Jarman? And that is Jarman. Amanda Jarman. So that's, I'm guessing, what you wanted to find out. All right. So We Miss You mailings are a good way to be more efficient about your time, and also get donors back. That's the thing, is like, I did this one time with an organization, a donor hadn't given in, I don't know how long it was. It had been, gosh, it had been over 10 years. It had been about 10 years. And they started giving, and they said, I don't know why I stopped giving. So they started giving again. And then they became a planned giving candidate. It was, they ended up declaring that they had left the organization in their will. So you never know what happens. A lot of times the return right away isn't great, but it's a long game. It's that you're hoping they're going to donate over the next several years. Okay, I need to move it along. Next slide, please. So now I'm shifting to the calendar. So I'm on the handout that is sample outline of year-end appeal campaign. So here's some tips. We live in extraordinary times. Oh, on top of everything else, we've got an election going on, people. So wait to ask for money until after the election. And I know some people are worried about the post office. If you do huge bulk mailings like our national, that is something to keep in mind. But if you are mailing locally, I wouldn't worry about it so much, especially because some of the tips that I'm going to give to you is I want to encourage you to break the bulk mail habit for some of your donors anyway, and focus on first class hand addressed envelopes to some of your folks that are more likely to give. Okay, so then you don't need to worry so much about if there are going to be interruptions with the post office. All right, so I want to encourage you to send email and hard copy. Mix your emails with content and ask emails. So what I mean by content is, if you are doing with your campaign, and again, we're talking about focusing on something more specific, put in between your asks emails that explain why it's important for you to be doing this program and for them to support the ask. So, for example, like let's go back to the cats. We know that we can't adopt out cats until they are well. And the faster we get them healthy and that they are adopted, they're going to adjust into that new home. The longer they stay in shelter, the harder it's going to be for them to adjust later. All right. So you could have a piece about something like that that is supporting your ask, going a little bit deeper. So check and see who hasn't given, and reach out again. And what I mean by that is, as you get into December, so like around the 20th or so, I usually have it on my calendar to look up and run a list. Who haven't we heard from yet? And maybe it's time to make a phone call to them. How are you? I noticed you hadn't given. Just did your letter get lost in the mail? Should I pop another one in the mail to you, or send another one to them with a handwritten note, something like that? Handwritten notes as much as possible, period, on your letters if you can. And then run your campaign into January. Like forever, yes, 30% of giving happens in December for our country, okay? And a third of it happens in the last few days of the month. Okay, last few days of the year, a third of that 30% happens in the last few days of the year. That's probably shifting a little bit now because of the way the itemizing taxes has changed in the last few years. So run your campaign into January. People are distracted during the holidays, probably going to even more so this year. And I've got one client, they raise a lot of money in January and they go through the 31st. Send thoughtful thank you notes. So be mindful, take a look at your thank you letter. Does it sound personal? Is it robotic? Tweak it a little bit. Make it and make it relate to your appeal. And then ask your board and staff for help. You don't have to do this alone. I had one client last year who asked their staff to help make calls from donors who hadn't given yet, and they loved it. Now, you may be like, turning pale thinking of that idea, and I'm not saying do it unless it feels right to you, and so on. Board members sometimes are happy to make calls. Certainly ask them to make thank you calls. And sometimes staff like making those thank you calls too. So keep that in mind. The thank you call, remember that stewardship process that I talked about at the beginning? This is a way you can involve people in fundraising without having to make an ask, is the thank you call. That said, sometimes people like to make those calls and ask for money too. So keep that in mind. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so the next handout I'm looking at is the one that's called Year-End Appeal Tips. So I want you to think about your letter and how you've written it in the past and how you're going to do it this year. And this is why your data in your database is so important. Dear first name, not dear friend, dear community member, whatever. It is really important when you do your mail merge that it says dear first name. All right, keep that in mind. People are more likely, because what you're doing is you're trying to make it look like this came from a human, because it came from you. All right. And you're supporting really, you're representing really important work that these people have probably shown an interest in the past. So draw them in. Handwritten envelope, first class stamp. Everybody loves mail. And you know what? Millennials love mail too. I'm hearing this more and more. Handwritten, dear first name, because what is, you're getting over those hurdles. All right, you're getting them to open it. Now they're in. All right, they're looking at the letter. Dear friend, this isn't someone that really cares about me. Maybe I'll glance at it. Dear Sally, oh, okay, what is it? Use photographs, graphics, and leave white space. So the letter about the cats, great example of that. The Lewis and Clark letter I showed you, beautiful, has the white space and whatnot. Now on my handouts, I have the Clackamas Service Center letter that I only showed you part of on the slides. And that is also beautifully written, has great photographs, white space and whatnot. Again, ask for something specific, like the van, like we did with client, medical care, scholarships. Make it look like it was touched by human hands. That is really important. Live stamp. PS is important too, and that it's almost like a subject line in an email. It's summing up what you're asking, so that if they skim down to the bottom, which most of the time they do, they at least read the PS and they get the gist of the whole thing. I like legal size. Go for it. Use a legal size piece of paper and try and make it as succinct as possible. Also, invite them to learn more about your work. So put in there, you want to learn more about what we're doing? Feel free to contact so-and-so. Use a human being, not info at. You can call them, you can, or email them. And let me tell you something. I've been advocating for this for years, and I have never known of someone who's been barraged by people saying, I want to learn more about your work. But it feels like you want to engage them. Going back to what we talked about earlier, donors as partners, if you want to bring them in and have them be a partner in your work, not this person that you're hoping will save you, all right, but really a partner, then this is a way to do it. Okay, so in addition, another comment, in addition to our mass-produced letters and first names, I try to leave a small personal handwritten note at the bottom. Donors love it. Again, and that goes back to that looks like touched by human hands piece. Okay, so again, questions, comments, please keep them coming. I'm trying to see if there's anything else on the tip sheet that I want to cover. Now, another document that I have on your, that's a resource here is by another one of my incredible colleagues. Okay, this is Brisa Culver is her name, and she does what she calls appeal salons. And I think they're sold out this year, but if you go to her website and get on her mailing list, this is something that you could do with her because she's doing them virtually now. But she has got a great outline on how to write the letters. So if you just like find yourself every year getting stuck, and let me tell you something, every year I Google how to write an effective appeal letter. I have been doing this for many, many years, and I just don't want to rest on my laurels. I want to learn. Again, be curious. And also, don't feel like you're in this alone and that there are people out there to support you. So look at this handout from my colleague, Brisa, and she walks you through how to write an appeal letter. There's so many great resources out there, and she's got a quick letter template for you, and she's got tips and what it should look like in the end, and she's also got a bunch of resources on there. Her name is Brisa, B-R-E-E-S-A, Brisa Culver, C-U-L-V-E-R, and tip sheet on the Nonprofit Institute website, okay, with all of my other documents. So don't worry about having to take notes. You can go about stuff like that. You can go and look and see. All right, next page, please. Okay, it seems like more and more organizations are using Giving Tuesday as their year-end appeal. What are your thoughts on using this campaign as opposed to a personal campaign? That's a great question. And I like Giving Tuesday as a way to reinforce your messaging, especially through social media. And do an email that day. I mean, everybody does. I mean, like this year, okay, got a little challenge for you. And write me afterwards and tell me how many you got. Because a lot of people are doing Giving Tuesday emails. And I see it growing over the years. Because it hasn't been going on all that long. You know, less than 10 years is my guess. Like maybe more like 8 or so. I can't remember exactly. So what you want to do is... there's a lot of incoming email that day and around that time. So I think one ask is not enough. All right. And that's why I think social media is a good place to advocate for it. And social media should happen throughout your campaign period with your specific asks and whatnot. So that's my response to you, San Diego Diplomacy Council is, I don't think Giving Tuesday is enough. If you have certain reasons why it is, then hey, don't add to your work because you got plenty of things to do. But if you need, if you're only making a fraction of what you could be making because you're not doing a full campaign, then I advocate that you do more than just on Giving Tuesday. One of the things that going back to the calendar, and this was a reminder of this, is that I really like having this warm up that happens, which is, I think, should start now. And that includes sending out a thank you email to everybody prior to Thanksgiving. And then hijacking your website, I don't know if they call it that anymore, but the first thing that pops up on your website is something about your campaign. And then looking very carefully at your website, make sure that it's easy for people to donate. And also, if you have an auto receipt, which a lot of folks do now, then it's important that you make it look like it doesn't come from a robot. Okay, make it personal. And folks, I am running out of time. I need to hurry up. So, okay, this is a summary. Start planning now. Get your team together and talk about a calendar. Get it lined up. All right. You can look at the calendar sample that I gave you. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Be thoughtful about your strategies. Get your board and staff members involved in making thank you calls. That's a really important way to have them involved. And then which I can't emphasize enough. And you know, the thing is, people are busy during the holidays. So if you want to do thank you calls, consider doing it after the first of the year. And provide a script. This is something I see people do, is they send out a bunch of names to board members and just say, okay, here's who you're going to call. Let them offer to call first. Okay. Don't just make an assumption. Next slide, please. So then when it's all over, it's important that you test your ROI. So I've got another document for you where you can do this. All right. It's a great outline. What I don't have on here that I want you to also look at very carefully is your social media. Run reports on social media. And I also want you to look very carefully at your click-throughs, your open rates on your emails and whatnot, and who is getting off your list. I have one client who I said, people, you have been barraging me with emails. I got like 4 over the weekend. What is going on? And look and see, what is your opt-out rate? Well, it had gone way up, and some really important folks had opted out. That's a problem. Okay, so look at those things. All right, I have got 51 seconds left. So I want to close this out. So let's go to our last slide. If you have questions that I wasn't able to answer here, or you prefer to do it privately, you are welcome to contact me. I am a fundraising teacher. I am a student for life, always learning. And I work with nonprofits trying to help them strengthen their fundraising programs, their boards, and their nonprofit management. So if you have questions for me, please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Take care of yourselves, okay? I'm thinking about you. I don't know you, but I'm thinking about you. Take care. Bye-bye.